Hello and welcome to this 4it techELITE session on remote engagement. These techELITE events provide a non-commercial forum for thought leadership and the exchange of ideas in the world of digital, IT and business change. And today we'll be looking at the vitally important issue of engaging the interest and ensuring the participation of people in remote meetings, of which we have all had so many over the last couple of years. Our speakers this evening are Martin Simmons, Senior Business Analyst at Red Vesper, and Paul Hickman, a Strategic BA and BA Graduate Leader at NatWest Bank. Together they will address the issue we will all have experienced of bland, uninspiring online meetings where the lack of engagement is palpable, not the Michelin starred experience you would like to expect, and which we would all like to deliver in our own meetings. This session will invite you to participate, and if Martin or Paul pick up on your points to address, we can, if you wish, unmute you and invite you to participate directly. But I'll let Martin and Paul manage that. Just tip me the wink and I can press the button. Almost everybody in attendance today has also registered for the follow-up session this time next week. Martin and Paul will no doubt address the content of that during the presentation, and that session will give us all the opportunity to hone these skills still further. So I will hand over now and welcome Martin and Paul.
Thanks, John, and thank you to everybody for joining this evening. It's nice to have you all on board. A bit of a backstory before we kind of go into the full presentation and what we're talking to today. And that introduction hopefully gave a really nice insight into where this came about. But for myself, this came about thinking about the value of meetings, I think. And I'm a senior business analyst working in probably more of a human-centered kind of behavioral world of how do we get people on board, how do we keep them engaged. And my first question for you all today to really consider, and please do put your thoughts in the chat here, is why do you think people leave an organization? Because I believe that the value of meetings has a real impact on people's day-to-day work and how they respond ultimately, whether they stay at an organization. And meetings is a real fundamental part of that, especially for those of you that have 10, 20, 30, even 40 hours of meetings in a week. So yeah, just put your thoughts in the chat very quickly. Why is it you think that people leave an organization? What's the top reason? And I've got some research here just to support this, which I'll explain in a second. I'll give you all a moment to just put your thoughts into that.
I can see them coming through, Martin. So
oh, you can. Great. Go on, Paul.
See them, yes. So awful boss, not being listened to in meetings, lack of stimulation. We'll get onto that without a shadow of a doubt. Yes, frustration with others and not feeling valued in a meeting. So not feeling like your voice is heard. Oh, wow, they're coming in thick and fast. Yet feeling undervalued. Unproductive. Yeah, demoralizing meetings. There's a lot of words that are around frustration, too much work not being appreciated, awful boss.
So yeah, if I may then, so using Indeed here, and by the way, we're going to get you all involved, and if we go quiet at any point, then that's something for us to learn from point one, is about embracing silence and letting people have a moment to think. But yeah, in response to some of those, especially the manager one, interestingly, according to Indeed, that's 5th on the list, which really surprised me. Salary and Challenger 1 and 2, and number 3 is the one that's captured my imagination for this, is feeling uninspired. And what is more demoralizing than leaving a meeting feeling like you've not been heard, feeling like there's no momentum, like the actions are never going to happen? And ultimately, especially if you're in lots of meetings in a day, walking away, and those project managers amongst us here, business analysts will definitely have been in those situations where you're kind of thinking, well, you know, the influence isn't there, things aren't happening, and do I even have any authority or ability to do my job? So a real kind of reason for leaving about feeling uninspired and demotivated. Now, Paul probably comes at this from a different angle. So my value in meetings is about how people kind of feel and getting that value around the human-centered approach. Now, I'll let Paul introduce himself and give the alternative angle, I guess.
Yeah, so hi guys. I'm afraid you've got to look at our faces, but we can't see yours. So the reason me and Martin got together is, I say, Martin comes from a B Corp, you know, in business for good, wanting people to feel valued and engaged, as we all should. My entire career has been working for rather large multinational corporations. JP Morgan, HSBC, NatWest is the latest one, and me and Martin struggled to get together on what the word value actually meant. So Martin's give his version of value, and I'll give you an alternative version of value, and hopefully in the placement, the area that you're working in, you can be on one side or the other, or at least it resonates. So in the corporate world, value equals time equals money. And if you're unlucky like me and you're literally in 7 or 8 hours worth of meetings every day, if you were to just take your company's day rate, let's say it's £500, 500 quid, divide that by your 7 or 8 hours, £50 an hour. Okay, if you're in one meeting a day, it's costing your company £50. If there's another 9 people in there with you, that meeting's costing 500 quid. And if you have that meeting repeatedly every week, let's say you're in a project catch-up meeting once a week, or you're in a stand-up every day, and those meetings go on and on and on and on, and nothing gets done, personality clashes, poor cultures, and nobody's really engaged, all of a sudden those 500 quids mount up, and there are thousands and thousands of pounds being spent with people being in meetings where that time and that money could be spent getting value somewhere else. And we'll leave the word value there for you to ponder.
Yeah. And so with that, that's the kind of the sell, and hopefully everybody's here kind of thinking about that and what value means for you. I guess today we're going to talk about how we can increase the engagement in our meetings as both a host and an attendee, because recognizing sometimes we are just invited and we do still have influence though. So that's what we'll talk to a little bit and how we can do that. And we'll get you all involved and engaging in the exercises. Now, to do that, John's going to share with you a link in the chat just now. So if you are on a kind of laptop or anything like that, then please do open up the link. We've got backups of the slide deck. Don't worry about doing anything with it and making a few kind of changes and that sort of thing. We want you all to take part and get engaged with the slide deck. And something to think about here when we're doing this is I think we've got a nice larger group, and you can see all the people joining at the top when you're in the slide deck. This is a really great way of giving everyone a voice at the same time and not having those kind of more vocal, maybe that kind of hippo, highest paid person in the room kind of dominating the conversation. So the method that we're choosing to do today is using existing tools and technology you've already got, in this case Google Slides. Some people might have PowerPoint and OneDrive. Giving everyone access, letting you go through it whatever pace you want, and we'll be talking to it and getting you engaging in the slides too. So that's enough about kind of the approach that we'll do. I will share screen, so if you've on a mobile device or anything like that, then it might be a bit more of a challenge for you today, in which case do use the chat and in the GoToWebinar, or you can happily sit back and watch and see what's going on. So I think send us a message if you have any challenges. We'll see if John can help us out. Hopefully you've got the slide deck up in front of you now. If you've not, then you can see us talking. And I think with that, we'll start off with the first exercise. So maybe Paul, if you can lead us through. Everybody join us on slide 2. And yeah, first thing is, what's in it for you today?
Thanks, Martin. So yes, guys, very nice, very simple. And I can see people starting to get onto slide 2 already. Grab yourself a Post-it note from the right-hand side, drag it off the pile, start, double click and type in, what are you looking for from this session? What did you give us this hour for? What are you expecting to learn? Oh, in it all goes, fantastic.
this is where we're going to go quiet for a moment while everyone does it. I'm going to put a timer on for us. So if we go quiet, don't worry, we're just giving you a moment to have a go at the exercise. Any highlights there, Paul?
Improve my hosting of my meetings, so not just being an attendee but being a host, and some tips on that. Yeah, I've got to understand to get more engagement with people. The camera myth. Oh, there's a good one. As we're on GoToWebinar, you can see us and we can't see you. Yes, that's a very clever question to put in. Increasing my influencing ability. That's very interesting comment. Yes, if you're a host in a meeting or an attendee in a meeting, you know, influence comes generally from confidence and repeatedly learning that skill over and over. There is no easy way to, there's no magic pill, there's no magic bullet. Like most skills, need to be learned and honed. How to improve engagement, getting everybody involved. Yeah, some inspiration, something new. Yes, you will get a couple of very clear handoffs towards the end, which you can take and use in your daily world, and we'd love to hear how those work for you. So yeah, quite a lot there, Martin.
I think, yeah, and just to kind of catch on that, so hopefully you've already seen a couple of hints already. So a couple of things we've done already. We've kind of asked you all a couple of questions to get you engaged as early as possible, trying to get you involved in the chat. So online meetings when we've not got the video, and we're obviously in the slide deck as well. So we've got a couple of things there just to think about, increasing that engagement, getting people engaged and involved as early as possible. And in this case, as I say, you don't need access to Mural and Miro and all these fancy tools for collaboration. You can just use what you've got. So that's just something to get you all thinking, just to get us started. So with that, what I'm actually going to do is, you can have a nosy at slide 3, and to give you a bit of backstory to slide 3, we actually told a nice little story here to get people to think about what do you want to pick for the agenda. So today we've got 5 options to consider, and you get to pick, and we'll try and do 2, but we'll probably only get through 1 if we're honest. And the reason that I'm not going to explain the story to you is because we tend to introduce a bit of bias. In fact, whenever we've told the story, everybody's picked the exact same one, and I won't tell you what it is until afterwards. So we won't do the story, but what I will do is I will take you on a bit of a reflection exercise before we get started. And I'll get you to join me in a bit of a meditative type thing. And the purpose of this is to get people to be present in the meeting. It's to get people to switch on and move everything aside that they've had before they attended today. So if you've been in back-to-back meetings, is a prime example, or if you've got something really front of mind that you're trying to solve, this exercise that we're about to do, it's all about kind of getting you to be present, getting you to readjust yourself to be present in this moment, in this room. And it might seem a bit extreme, so you might not want to copy and paste the exact same exercise, but just think about, when you start a meeting, how are you spending the first 5 minutes? How are you spending the first 15 minutes to make sure that people are present and understanding? And to do that, I'm going to invite you to imagine the last great dining experience that you've had. And you're welcome to close your eyes for a moment with me. Yeah, what was the last great dining experience that you had? Start thinking about who you attended with. Was it friends, colleagues, family? And whereabouts was it? What was the restaurant? Maybe it was somewhere that you could sit outside. What was the ambience like at that restaurant, at that dining facility? Was it quite intimate and quiet, or was it quite lively and loud? And when it came to choosing the food and when the food arrived, what sort of smells were there? How did the food taste? Is that what made the dining experience so exceptional? Maybe something went wrong during the event and actually somebody put it right, or it turned into something of an amusing story, and that made it into something that's of interest and really memorable. How did you feel at the end of that dining experience? What really stood out about it that made it the one that was brought to mind today? So aside from the getting the taste buds tingling, the purpose of that, as I say, is resetting. We're not just kind of going straight into the meeting. We're not just going straight into the agenda. We're giving people a chance to do something slightly different, to refocus, re-energize, and just give that mind a moment's rest and to kind of be in a positive mindset. If you go into a meeting in a kind of more negative, like defensive mindset, then the chances are the meeting's going to be less successful. If you go in with a positive mindset, in that open, I'm ready to receive information, I'm ready to share, then you're going to bring that above the line. You're going to bring that meeting into something really positive. So that's what we're trying to do here with the positive feeling. And a tip here, if you can invoke memory, senses in particular, smell, taste, and all those sorts of things, then that again, it makes it into something really positive and experience. I don't know about you, Paul. Hopefully you've managed to get out, but you get any good memories brought to mind on that one?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I haven't been out very much actually for due to COVID and other reasons. But I think for people, you know, it's different if you're in senior level meetings or meetings with more imposing stakeholders. It's very difficult to use the example that Martin's done, which is take a minute and go through meditation. But there are other ways to get people. You're effectively trying to shift them from using I think it's the right side of the brain to the left side, or maybe the left to the right. But you're trying to shift them off balance and into that creative side, because usually the meetings they're in are tired and the brain needs to reset. And you just give them that moment to, as Martin says, senses, your taste, your sight, your memories. You're effectively using a different part of your brain, and it helps to relax, so that bang, 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 you can go for your next 20 minutes, because you can only keep your concentration for 20 to 30 minutes. So you've got to have a reset in there. And if you're in meeting after meeting after meeting, to gain traction with your audience, there was a comment earlier, one of the posts, it was about how to get everybody involved and how to increase your influencing capability. If you've reset somebody and they're a senior sponsor stakeholder and they've been tired all day and you're the only person that's managed to reset them, you're going to get more out of them for 20 minutes. So it's key. It's a good way to instantly get engagement with people.
Yeah. And once again, that exercise itself might not be for you, but yeah, just think about how can I get them to reset and be present and do something a bit different, I guess. So, if we carry on doing the same thing, then we get the same results. So with that, I'm going to invite you all to, on slide 3, take a red dot from the left-hand side and drag and drop it onto whichever of those 5 options grabs your fancy. So this is you picking the agenda now. You get to pick what the exercise is and what we talk to. We've got increasing audience engagement, selecting the ideal meeting structure, increasing the value of your meetings, choosing interactive tools and techniques, and identifying and fixing meeting issues. Some of those you might link back to the story. So I'll just give you a moment to drag and drop that. Hopefully we'll get a one-side thing. So this is where the meeting differentiates next week, by the way. We'll probably only get to do one this week. So next week, definitely, if you've picked one and we don't get to go through it, a big one for you, we'll do the vote again next week, and we'll make sure that the one we do today is not picked. and we'll do some other bits as well around that. But this is a big differentiator between this and next week, which one gets chosen.
Whilst everybody's doing that, there is obviously a high amount of trust with the audience, and we don't know you, you don't know us. And of course, steal 3 or 4 dots and pull them across if you so feel inclined. But this is another really good example where, because it's a silent voting, everybody has the same ability to influence the meeting or set the agenda. And then nobody's following a hippo. Nobody's waiting for their boss to decide what the meeting's going to be about, and then everybody goes, oh yeah, okay, let's do that then. So it's a great way to, you know, get that inclusion of everybody in the meeting, whether they're extrovert, introvert, you know, just listening, not wanting to participate, things like that. It's a great leveler. You're seeing it working in action.
Yeah, absolutely, and especially if you get people to do that kind of on their own rather than kind of doing it in groups. If people do it in groups, then you might get consensus, and especially if you've, say, got a meeting with, let's say you've got a room full of developers, and you've got 1 business analyst, 1 project manager, and, you know, 3 or 4 developers, then if you do a voting, there's a danger here that the developers will kind of focus on their needs, and that's not the needs of the overall project, or not the top priority. So when you're doing this, just remember who your audience are, remember you know, that kind of individual voting, and just be cautious that, you know, you're not kind of got the bias and the weighting before you even start. Something to be cautious of there. So we've got the middle one here, increasing the value of your meeting as the top one. Because there's so many votes for the interactive tools and techniques, I'll make sure that we do give it a good mention. And yeah, let's have a look at increasing the value of our meetings. So that's on slide 6. So if you'll join myself and Paul on slide 6 now, we'll get on to the exercise. And this is quite a nice one if you've got pen and paper to hand, if you've got notepad on your computer, anything like that. In order to increase the value of our meeting, the first thing we need to do is spot the signs that it needs to happen in the first place, because we often attend a meeting and we just kind of go through the motions, or we kind of we do our best to make it valuable, but we're already in the meeting. At that point, there's so many things that we might have been able to do that we've probably not. So the first thing is to recognize early and often which meetings are already adding the most value possible, which ones we can do something with. And that's what this exercise is about. It's about us taking 5 minutes at the start of the day, at the start of the week, just to kind of assess which meetings do I need to kind of maybe add a bit of value to. And bearing in mind, you can do this as a host or an attendee. So the first part of it, and I'm going to set a timer. If you could, on pen and paper, notepad, whichever you choose, just have a look at your calendar and figure out what the next 5 to 10 meetings in your diary are. If you need to kind of get an example, you can just scroll to the right on the slide tech. We've got one there. If you want to jump ahead in the exercise, feel free, but I'm going to set a timer now. What are the next 5 to 10 meetings in your diary? Just make a little list of those for me, please. We're just doing, what are the next 5 to 10 meetings in your diary? Making that list. So if you're already ahead on that, then you can carry on with the next, but I'll just do a bit of an explanation to the next points as well. So point number 2 here, how would you expect to feel at the end of the session? So at the start, I mentioned about feeling uninspired, reasons people leave an organization. And this is really key. So how am I expecting to feel at the end of that meeting, or of those 5 to 10 meetings? And it's a very personal one, this. Am I going to feel motivated, dejected? Am I going to feel kind of like I've been heard? or maybe not listened to. So we're going to score this out of 5, 5 being fantastic, 1 being as bad as it can be. And how do you expect to feel at the end of these meetings? And it's very, like I say, personal. And the reason that we can do this in conjunction with number 3, actually. So number 3 is about how much value do you expect the meeting to bring? And value here, we need to be really careful. It's more about the team, the other people in the meeting, the organization. So it's a bit more external, this second part to it. So we've got the how am I expecting to feel, because it's important. I need to make sure that I'm getting the value and the motivation, everything I need from my working day before I otherwise I start to lose motivation and morale. And then the second part is how much value is it going to bring to the team, to the people who are in the organization? And the example I like to give here in the second part is if you're doing performance reviews, then it might be hugely valuable to the other person, especially if there's something tangible that comes out of it. To you personally, if you're doing 10 performance reviews, and you're doing them quarterly, then that to you is actually quite painful, and it's not giving the most value to, well, it's giving loads of value to the people, but you might feel a bit, underwhelmed or a bit kind of overworked because of it. So how do you expect to feel? Quite low. How do you expect other people to kind of feel in terms of value? How much value is it to the organization? It might actually be really high. And if it's not, then you're gonna see what comes next with the scores. So answer those 2 questions for me, please. I'll just go quiet for another kind of 30 seconds, a minute. How do you expect to feel at the end of the session? How much value do you think it's going to bring to the organization? And again, on the right hand side, you can see that example of what it's starting to look like on the little matrix there with those scores. So you're doing that against each of those 5 to 10 meetings you listed. And a perk, it's about 30 seconds there. So don't worry, you've not done them all. You're starting to get a flavour and a feel for. I tend to score, I would say, kind of reasonably highly. If you might be somebody who's a bit more strict on your scoring. So when you add those 2 numbers up, you'll start to see out of 10, how much value is that meeting going to bring? And I would tend to put a threshold at somewhere around the 7 mark, maybe the 6 mark, to say if it's lower than that number, then let's have a look. What do we want to do about it? And I'll come on to that in just a moment. But when you tot up those scores, then yeah, is it above or below the line? And then I can make a judgment call. What do I want to do about it? So what we've immediately done here with a 5-minute exercise is started to identify those meetings that we want to add value to, so we can act on it and do something with it. In the case that I've got here, I think I had a change board meeting as quite low. So, everyone's coming to the meetings, everyone's getting a yes every time in that case, I think. And so actually, why are we even turning up? If everyone's just going to say yes all the time, then you might as well just kind of push it through on an email or a notification or whatever else it might be. We're spending an hour not doing much. So think about, the outcome of the meeting. Is it going to get the outputs that we desire and that sort of thing? And if anybody's got any low scores, send them over. You don't need to say what it is particularly. But if anyone's, and likewise, if anyone's got any great meetings that seem to constantly do really well, then put them in the message into Paul there. So the last part of that is accept, decline, and elevate, hopefully speaking a little bit to themselves. So if it's above the line, we just accept it. If it's below, we've got a decision. Do we want to decline or elevate it? And if we decline it, then nothing will change. And also we won't be there. So might also have the missing components to be successful. Elevating it, I will just open this up. So on slide 6, I've just revealed another little part of that, of what we can do, and I can talk to that in a minute. Before I do, I'm going to draw your attention to another use of this exercise, and that is, you may have heard of, especially in Agile, team health checks, where we get the team together and say, how are we feeling as a team? Are we feeling motivated, positive? And we spot that over time. So we might have that meeting every fortnight, every month, and over time we can see the dips and we can say what's kind of caused them, and we can do that analysis to say what motivates the team. Now, using this exercise, let's use a stand-up as an example. If we've got a stand-up every day, if you just said to the team, you know, out of 5, how are we feeling about the value of this? And then we tracked that over a week or two, you might soon start seeing, hang on, the meetings are actually in decline, or you might see that they're pretty steady. Maybe we can up it a little bit. So think about using this over time as well as for an individual perspective and for the entire team, making sure that everybody has that input to say how they're doing. And we can also kind of pinpoint those individuals to say what would make it better for you. So think about how that can be used beyond just ourselves. And that grid on the right hand side, that shows an example of that. How are we doing so far there, Paul? How was yours?
Yeah, my dears meetings upon meetings upon meetings, some of them are very valuable for me, and some of them are not valuable for me, but I know are valuable for others. But yes, I do have, I'm very harsh, so I do have a number of 3s, which used to be, I think when we started doing this, we're up around the 6s, and over time have got less, I've received less value from, and the audience that I've had engaged have received less value from as well, so they're likely to be planned towards next year. They're actually going to get morphed and pulling 3 meetings in together. But it could never have been done if we hadn't been tracking meeting value and trends over time. So just, you know, it has worked for me. It has worked for my team in the area that I work in. It seems simple, but give it a go. Give it a go. Sit with your team or just do it by yourself. And track it over, you know, if you do it every day, if it's a stand-up, you know, within 2 weeks you'll have a trend. You know, if it's, you know, a fortnightly retrospective or something like that, then it might take, you know, a month, 2 months to get a trend. But if you don't track it, it can't be measured, and what gets measured gets done. So give it a go. Very simple, very easy, very effective.
Thank you. Hopefully a few of you got a few meetings in mind. So if you've got any of those below that threshold, then keep that in mind for after this session and what you might do about it. So 4 really, really simple, easy things that we can do. First of all, one of my favorite types of questions, how might we? Add how might we to any sort of topic, especially when you've got a blocker, and we convert it from a kind of negative or a challenge into something where we're starting to ideate and think creatively. So ask those curious questions as a host, as an attendee. Go out there and say, how might we improve this? How might we get that value? If there's a blocker, how might we unblock it? But asking that, and then with the blockers, asking ahead of time, why might this not work? What things are going to stop us? So add a bit of curiosity before the meeting with any of those lower scores and start opening up that dialogue and that conversation. And on that 3rd red one there, try and do that verbally. So if you do that in an email, just be really, really careful, because that's where you can get caught out a little bit. You know, who are you to be challenging me? Who are you to be thinking like this? And all of a sudden we get those kind of emotional realms of conflict that are hard to navigate on email. So we want to convey the emotion correctly, and to do that, definitely recommend verbal. So just pick up that phone 5 minutes before the meeting or a week before the meeting, whenever it is, and just have that little conversation. And provide options as well. Don't go in there with a kind of doomsday, you know, this isn't going to work. Could we consider? So today we've talked about the reflection exercises. We've talked about having that meditative moment, the asking the audience, what do you want from the session? You know, put those options to people. Say when you're speaking to them, oh, maybe at the first 5 minutes, could we just ask people what they're looking for from the meeting, what a successful outcome would be for them? And that immediately gets people a bit more interested, a bit more engaged as to what they might get from it. So provide options. You've got the do nothing, we get the same result, and option B, what's the other option that's going to be the success? Doing that verbally, asking those questions, and then of course a big thanks. So whoever's hosting it, just remember they've got a busy calendar, they've got a hard day themselves, they're navigating loads of pressures, so make sure that we're being thankful and recognizing their work and their empathy. Over to you there, Paul.
Yeah, I'm going to tie in. There's been a couple of questions come in from a few different people, and they're around the subject of not this exercise, but the earlier exercise when we were voting for which of the 5 options we were going to go for today. And some of the questions coming in are around, I have a lot of meetings and the agenda's fixed. How can I, you know, this is the outcome we're heading for, or this is what the meeting's all about. And how can you go about changing that or influencing that? So if the agenda's been, usually what happens, you start your project, all of the meetings get set up, they get set up with like 5 standing agenda items, and then they never ever get changed, and people just turn up every week to the meetings and they go a little bit stale. So I think a lot of the questions are coming in and they're around that. And you know, there are opportunities to challenge the status quo, and Martin mentioned it earlier. If you're having the same meetings talking about the same stuff and progress is not happening, people are going to get disengaged, and then of course it's a spiral to disaster. You are not only a member of the audience, you're a member of the meeting, and if you're the host, even better. But you know, how can Martin's gone through a few examples here. How can you ask some curious questions to open up? I guarantee if it's the same meeting and it's had the same agenda for at least 3 months, you are not going to be the only person that goes, God, when is this going to change? When are we going to move forward? So it does always take a brave soul to go forward. We've shown some examples of how maybe silencing the audience or anonymizing the audience gives people that chance to say what they really think without fear of retribution. So there are ways and means to do that. There are a couple of examples. If you look in the notes sections on this slide deck, there are also links to other examples of how to do that as well. So, you know, yeah. I'm trying to wrap in some of the questions that have come in, and I think they're more around stale meetings. How do I get stale meetings kind of not back on track, but more engaging in a meeting that's been going on for 3 months?
Thank you, Paul. And I am going to jump to slide 5 momentarily on for that question. If you have the same environment for your meeting, then often you get the same results. Can you manufacture or create a different environment for the meeting? So the prime example here, especially when we're in person, is we go to the same meeting room every time, and therefore we have the same agenda, people sit in the same seats and all that sort of thing. So on slide 5, what we've got is a kind of unstructured to structured kind of, what should we call it, hierarchy of range. And you know, is there a possibility to take that host out for a bit of a coffee and have a chat with them, and you know, kind of listen to them, get their thoughts, and on what might change, and maybe even share yours? Is there an opportunity to move the meeting into a different area? Or if we're online, is there an opportunity to try a new tool out, maybe try a different format for the meeting like what we're seeing here? So think about the structure of the meeting. Think about, does it have to be the rigid 5-point agenda and that sort of thing? And if it does have to be that, then is there another way of going through it? Can we change the setting and the environment, how we do it? So just a thought there on that exercise. To do that, by the way, I recommend thinking about the outcome you're trying to achieve, and then using that structured, unstructured slider. What's the kind of least structure or most structure, depending on the organization you work in, that we can do to achieve that outcome? And then you can start thinking about, does it need to be show and tell? Does it just need to be that 5-point agenda? Perfect. So I think we've reached the end of that exercise, and this is another opportunity for a bit of a pause for thought. So maybe, Paul, if you can lead us through that on slide 9, a bit of a chance to reflect on what we've done so far.
Yeah, definitely, guys. So, you know, there's been a lot of talk, and I'm sorry there's no two-way engagement with you through GoToWebinar, but, you know, I think being able to track your meetings, you've just done it very quickly on Notepad, and there's an example on the slide deck. You know, it's very simple. You saw how very simple that was. Could you take that back to your team, go through your week's agenda, the regular meetings, and ask people, get them to go through and see it. What is it, Fist of 5? Is this really rocking your world 5, or is it kind of suck and it's less than 1 and a thumbs down? You know, are people going to be comfortable to do that? And then can you get you know, that collated together into that graph? I think that's probably the best takeaway you're going to get. But have a think. Can you do that in your organization?
So for anyone that's missed that, how might you, can you do this? How might you make this work for you in your organization? Have a think about what one action you're going to take away and give a go to tomorrow. How are people feeling about the silence? Look, I'm even feeling it, and that's more because of time, to be fair. But when we go silent there, just remember, try it in your meeting. Just try saying to people, I want a minute for everyone to have a chance to reflect. As I say, I'm pushing us forward, so I apologise that I'm cutting through it. But it's hard to get used to silence, and really encourage giving it a go. The more you give people that room to think and reflect, the better and more confident we'll get from all the outputs and the ideas that come out of people. Before we close and go towards the end of this, I am going to take us back to slide 7 because that was second on the vote. And I'm not going to go through it all other than to say, and we may have a chance to do this in detail next week, there are 3 different choices on slide 7 around how we can run our online workshops. We've got what we're doing today, which is a co-authored slide deck where everybody's got the same access and everyone can edit. We've got Mural and Miro, which are 2 pretty much the same tools for collaboration. And of course, we've got, if you're a Microsoft world, we've got Whiteboard. If you're in a Google world, we've got Jamboard. So 3 different tools, and actually we can do the exact same exercises in all of those 3 tools. So what we're calling out here is, use the tools you've got available to you. You don't need to get the latest shiny one. You can use what you've got available. Try and find different ways to use it. And so what I'm just going to open on the right-hand side of slide 7 is a couple of ideas for you all. If people wanted some new ideas. So first and foremost, the 1, 2, 4 all method, and I'll talk to this really quickly, but use breakout rooms and you ask people, right, what do you think to this individually? Bring it back into the room, then break out again. What do you in pairs think of together? So get people talking in pairs, then get people talking in a group of 4, then bring everyone together. A good way of stopping groupthink because you get small little kind of segments of what people are thinking. So 1, 2, 4 all, and if you're in person, same thing, get people individually separate and all that sort of thing. So have a look up of that method. 6-hat model, especially the BAs amongst us will be very familiar with. Getting everyone to wear the same hat, I'm a big fan of. We spoke about how might we before as a question. Actually, that how might we question is getting everyone to ideate. So we're getting that hat of creativity and that sort of thing on. And then the 1-minute story, I'm not going to go into too much here, but storytelling is something I'm a big fan of. And if we can start adding characters, setting, environment, plot to our discussions rather than just data and evidence, then that's a big thing. And there's those 3 links underneath. I'm a big fan. If you're not a fan of what you've seen today and you think, oh, it's not quite applying to me, go and have a look at Avoid Death by PowerPoint by JP Phillips on YouTube. I think it might be 30, 45 minutes. I can't remember the exact length, but at the bare minimum, it will get you to start thinking about the design of your slide deck. If you're going down the show and tell route and how you can engage people's brains, how can you make it so it's not just death by PowerPoint? So have a look at that. And liberating structures and tasty cupcakes, the 1, 2, 4 all method, 6-hat model, they're all in there. So that is basically a Bible of different creative ideas and exercises you can do during your online sessions. So have a look at those, take those away with you. So as I say, if we do that next week, then you'll get all of that in much more detail. So we'll start to wrap up now, I think. And Paul, maybe if you can take us through, have we actually met people's expectations? And feel free to answer that in the chat as well.
Yeah, so there are a lot of chat questions coming in because, of course, it's the only way that people can interact with us. the slide deck's available. You can literally copy and paste the URL. I think on the front page there's a short URL as well, which would be easier for you to copy. It's all available on Red Vespa site for free. Did you get what you were looking for from this session? A lot of the post-its that were originally put on were things like, you know, improving my skills, improving how I host, increasing my ability. So there was how do I make myself better so that it'll be a better experience for others? We've whistle-stopped through, you know, 5, 6, 7 examples of how to do meetings a little bit differently, depending on which organization you're in. We're not going to jump across screens, but there is a quite gamified crossword further down in the slide deck for you to have a play with. You know, it does come down to confidence, trial and error. If you're working in a smaller organization or one that's got more innovation, I'm going to call it, or more ability for you to try things out, I would recommend going to the tools. I did see that the tooling options was the second voted subject to talk about, so we'll probably deep dive into that, Martin, next week for the audience and go through the different tools. A lot of it was kind of how to get people involved and getting some inspiration and getting the outcome that you want. I think one of the big takeaways for today is if you are running or attending the same meetings in the same way and expecting a different outcome at the end, you're sadly mistaken. The world doesn't work like that. So, you know, we have to try new ways of having meetings, and that by default, trying something new is going to engage your audience more. Try it out. There are loads of links on this slide deck, and yeah, Martin will show you the remainder of the deck with the links on how to find out more information.
Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more with the kind of giving things a go. So we've talked about kind of the hosted meetings, the reflection, the exercises we can do to get people more engaged. My big thing here is about not just doing show and tell presentations. Unfortunately, it has been it has been just us talking to you, but I'd like to think because you've been in the slide deck, because you're engaging that way, you felt like you're a bit more engaged and it's been a bit more interactive. So those are the sorts of tips and tricks that we can go through. So just having a look at that, you know, what people wanted from this session. Absolutely, lots of ideas there, and do share if there's any that have really stuck out for you. What one thing are you going to take away today and give a go to? That's always the question that we like to look at. The cross stick that Paul mentioned, slide 11 there. Paul, could you just click the Easter egg for me, please, in the bottom left? There you go. Can everyone see that in pink? Just being highlighted there, and click off it and click on it again, and other people clicking on the cross stick background. Lots of people clicking different things. Right, a nice little tip for you. If you're co-hosting is something that we probably underutilize, if we're honest, having somebody else to support you in the conversation, to break up your own voice, also to make sure that everyone's engaged and feeling like they're being heard. So the Easter egg there is a nice way for myself and Paul to transfer the conversation to each other. You'll see on other slides there's a hand in the bottom left. And so what we do is we click on that back and forth to say, I've got something to say. And so just something to think about. Can you use a co-host in your meetings, first of all, to help you out? And second, when you do, how can you transfer it without kind of Paul just speaking over me and vice versa? And that way people feel like, okay, I will get my chance to speak. I just need to make it known that I want to. So we use that hand there. There's lots more in the notes on the cross stick about, you know, reflection and whatnot. You can see all the answers if you scroll up and want to cheat at that. Don't worry, it's not too overkill there. So I think that brings us pretty much to a close. And Paul, Paul, before I do close that, are there any other questions that you want to cover off from that chat?
No, there are a few people pointing out, you know, that's a really cool way to hand over from different people in the meeting. So if that's your one takeaway, then fantastic. It's been a worthwhile.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, should have kept it for 2 minutes for that one. Yeah, think about the co-host and the role of having somebody else help you out and do that. If you went to a restaurant, back to Michelin star link, you know, you've got all these different roles in the restaurant. You don't have one person serving you doing everything, and that's what makes it a great experience. The fact that you've got all that support and help, and so let's use that in a work context. On slide 12, we do have a link there. You don't even need to sign up to anything. We've done a bit of a kind of a playbook, I guess, for how can you increase remote engagement and online sessions. So if that's useful, scan that or go onto our insights pages and have a look and see if there's anything useful for you to take away. My key message for you all today, and I've said it a few times now, is what's your one thing that you're going to take away? And please, you know, get in touch, message myself, message Paul, and tell us what you've learned from it. Tell us any challenges, and hopefully we'll be able to incorporate those in the future. So yeah, give it a go. Let us know how it's worked for you. All the connections are there. We're very much welcome and accept everybody there. And we'll just hang around for a quick moment for any questions. But thank you everybody for your time today. Have a lovely evening. And I think, in fact, now I think about it, John's probably going to come in now, aren't you? So a nice segue to John.
Thank you very much for that. There's some super comments coming in, including around that handover tip. And a lovely comment from Robbie. I went for a dog walk with a manager. He lives near me and had a busy day. It was lovely and productive. So changing up the venue, it's a nice, easy takeaway. I'm going to try that one. We have someone asking about the interactive presentation. Can you help attendees with where they can find that, Martin?
We've got the link that was posted at the start. So if you could just post that again, John, please. Yeah. And in terms of a background, how you do it, if there's a side segment to that for yourself, just create a slide deck, put it in a shared space. So if that's OneDrive or if that's Google Drive, then in the top right, you may have seen when I was presenting before, there's a share button. In Teams and all the other applications, it's slightly different, but just share it publicly, make it public access. Now, some organizations will stop you going truly public, but you can still make it public internally. So just share it publicly internally and create a backup so that if anything goes wrong, you've got a private copy. But hopefully John's got that link out to you now. And yeah, that's as simple as that for co-authoring and sharing.
I've shared that again. We have one questioner asking whether the session next week will be recorded because he can't make it. The answer is yes, and that will be distributed to all people who have registered to attend. Thank you so much, Martin and Paul. This has been absolutely fascinating, and we've all learned, I'm sure, a great deal, and we'll be focusing on at least one takeaway. Otherwise, of course, what's the point? We will share the recording of this session in the next day or two, and of course the recording of next week's session a day or two after that. We look forward very much to the follow-up, covering another of the topics chosen at the beginning of today's session. If you've registered but cannot after all make it next week, do please let us know. It's helpful to know numbers. You will receive a satisfaction survey when you close your browser, and also there's a link in an email you receive in an hour's time. Do please take a moment to complete this. It's very quick and it's incredibly helpful to hear how we've done and how we can improve, and of course feedback on our valuable speakers. I hope you've enjoyed this session. Thank you for being here, and Martin, Paul, thank you so much. We'll see you next week. In the meantime, goodbye.